Alrighty then. It's amazing what a couple of hours can do. This is much more workable now. So I've just let it sit out for a couple of hours. That'd be the equivalent, let's say, of putting it in your bag, but leaving the bag open overnight. That might have the same effect because it's still wet, it's still pliable, and still attachable with stuff. But it'll be a lot easier to work with because when I push and pull on it, it will have a tendency more to stay in place. So let's see, how would I go about smoothing this off? First thing that I'm going to do is right in here, right in the bottom here, I'm going to work this up against my hand right here. Okay. There and there. And little by little, I've started in the absolute center, but I'm working it, making sort of what they call it, concentric rings, a little bit wider, a little bit wider, a little bit wider. So I've got a lot of fingerprints in this, but the shape is essentially right. So in order to just sort of make that shape a little bit more regular and to get rid of those fingerprints, I'm just rolling it and not putting a whole lot of pressure on it, just little by little, sort of pushing the clay from the fat spots, or excuse me, from the thick spots into the thinner spots. But careful, the reason why you don't want to put a lot of pressure on it is because you could easily push into those thin spots, making it worse instead of better. The other thing is, remember, I want to maintain my nice round shape in this, and so I keep turning it this way as I smooth that out. Okay, that's as far as I can get it on this part of the table. And let's see if we can't move the camera a little bit. It's going to be a little shaky for a few minutes. So this part here where it dips in, that'd be pretty difficult to do on this part of the table here. But we want to keep these tables really nice because look, even the edge of the table is part of my tool. So here what I can do is do it so that you guys can see as well here, is I can use the edge of the table. So same thing, but just using that edge. And that way it can go in here. Okay, so back to it. Now maybe that's as far as I could take it on the table, but that did quite a bit to smooth it out. From here, use my finger, or maybe even better yet, one of these wooden tools. The wooden tools work really great for smoothing. Maybe just a little bit of water, just to lubricate the tool a little bit. But we don't want to add a whole lot of water to it because then it'll become weak again. And here we go, working on this inside a little bit, just like so. The wooden tools have various shapes to them, so that will allow me to get into an area like this down in here and smooth it out. The other thing is that when you're sanding, oftentimes you have areas like this that it's hard to sand all the way down into. Well, so that's why when you're doing this stage of it, smoothing it out, you should try and get the thing as smooth as possible. So you have to do the least amount of sanding as necessary. See how easy it was to make those dips disappear? Alright, looks like the inside is about as good as I'm going to get it for now. Concentrate on the outside. And some of it I couldn't get with the table, so I used my wooden tool for that. Alrighty. So getting that rim even, just going to turn it over and give it a little bit of a bump. Turning it, turning it, turning it, turning it, turning it, turning it, turning it. Not a lot, not a lot of pressure. And that's made it nice and flat. I've got this one part that's going in a little bit, so I could either bump it down a little bit more, or better yet, just fill in that little bit. It's still wet enough to work with. Okay, as we get closer, I'm going to continue to look at my shape and see if I'm getting right there with my plan. And it looks like I have it actually maybe a little bit more extreme in some ways than my plan is. So I'll continue to work with that and shape it out a little bit. So now I'm looking at one side to the other to see if I can get it symmetrical. Looking at the curve at the bottom, looking at the curve at the top. Okay, not too bad. The other thing that we can do is that every time that I go to mash down this rim, it sort of distorts the shape a little bit. So what I'll do to trim it is I'll just get my hand nice and steady, maybe even getting something to raise it up a bit. Okay, I've got something to raise it up a bit. That way I can hold my hand very, very firm. Very, very firm. And what I'll do is I'll take, remember that little dip that was right here? I'm just going to take it right there. And nice and firm, right at that place. Just ever so gently. See, my tip of that pencil is not moving. Not one bit. I'm slowly rotating. I'm not putting any pressure on this at all. And if I've done this right, when it's all done, when it comes around full circle, it should line up with the original drawing. Right there. So it's lined up with the original. You can see that right there. Okay. So little by little, we go in a little bit deeper this time. Being careful to follow my original line. I'll switch to my butter knife. So I've got a little bit of water on here. Okay, so that top might not look pretty right now, but it's even. Shape's not looking too bad, especially with that top evened out. And now I can make that a little bit prettier if I like. Maybe taking something like my loop tool. Let's trim it up just a little bit. Peek, make sure that's all good. And the clay is still very soft, but it's not the super soft as it was when I first made it. It was really important to get the shape as good as I could before attaching things. Because once I've attached my decoration to the outside, it'll be very hard to smooth, especially you can't just blanket sand anymore. The inside, not so much. That'll be okay. I can just sand in here because there's nothing impeding it. But here, yeah,